All right, guys, today we're going to work on the second half of lesson 5.6, which was on inverses of linear functions. We're going to really concentrate today on looking at the whole process of what does a function represent? And then once we know what it represents, what does its inverse really do for us? And then how we can do some calculations with those. All right, so let's take a look at this. So if you look at the title, it's finding, evaluating, and interpreting an inverse function. All right, so you're going to be given some inverse functions with some meaning, and then it's going to be our job to kind of interpret and use that information. So this first one says P of n, which is given below, is the price in dollars for n grams of vitamins. So this P function will calculate how much it's going to cost you for n grams of vitamins. So if you look up here in the function itself, okay, you can see that it's 0.25 n. So that's 25 cents per gram plus $5.20 will give you the total cost of buying n grams of a vitamin. Okay, so this thing, if you know however many grams you want to buy, you plug it in here, do the calculations, that tells you the price. Okay, we're going to find the inverse of this function. All right, and it says take x to be the output of function p. We'll talk about that here in a second. All right, so there's our function, and it's a way we generate the cost or the price for n grams of a vitamin. So this first question says, which statement best describes the P inverse function? All right, so remember, the inverse is all about switching the two variables. All right, so this first variable, P of n, is the price, n is the number of grams of the vitamin. So if we switch this function around and find its inverse, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be finding the number of grams for a cost, for a price. So we'll be given a price, find the number of grams you can buy. This function is tell me how many grams you want to buy, I'll tell you what the price is. The new one is going to be you tell me how much money you have, I'll tell me how many vitamins you can buy. All right, so if we go down here and look at our choice, the inverse function is going to tell you how many vitamins in grams that you can buy based on X dollars. So it takes this equation, this function, and it flips the variables around. Okay, so that's what that means. So let's take a look at this now in terms of just finding it. So again, same givens here. This one's saying find the inverse function. So let's take this function and find its inverse. All right, how do we find the inverse of a function? We worked on it yesterday, right? First thing we do is replace this P of n with a y, interchange my two variables, n and y, and now solve for y. Okay, so I'm going to subtract 5.2 from both sides. Okay, we're going to get n minus 5.2 equals 0.25y. I like to switch sides now. 0.25y equals n minus 5.2. We want to isolate our y, so we're going to divide each side by 0.25. 0. And then that will give me y equals n minus 5.2 over 0.25. So our inverse function, P inverse, is x minus 5.2 over 0.25. So what this inverse does is you tell us how much money you have, that's your x, and we'll tell you how many vitamins you can buy in grams based on the dollar amount you give us. So it flips the meaning of the original equation. Okay, last question under this concept is, all right, what's P inverse of 8.5? All right, so we want a function value of our inverse. So what we'll do is write our inverse. Remember, we just found this. P inverse of x is x minus 5.2 over 0.25. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to find P inverse of 8.5. So we're going to replace the x in our function with 8.5. That's our x is now 8.5, so we'll plug it in. 8.5 minus 5.2 is 3.3 divided by 0.25, and it's 13.2. So the inverse value of 8.5 is 13.2. Now, what does that mean? Well, remember what our inverse function does. You tell me how much money you have, I'll tell you how many grams of vitamins you can buy. So what this means is for $8.50, you can buy 13.2 grams of vitamins. Okay, so it's just flipping it around. If you remember our first equation, our P of N up here is you tell me how many grams of vitamins you want, I'll tell you the cost. Now we'll say, all right, here's how much money I have. How many grams of vitamins can I buy? So it's a very useful thing to have, is the inverse of a function. Okay, and we have to figure out the meaning of how this all gets represented. Let's do another one here. Okay, let me get out of that. Okay, next one. Scientists have found a relationship between the temperature and the height above a distant planet's surface. So T of H given below is the temperature in Celsius at a height h kilometers above the planet's surface. And the relationship is as follows. So the temperature at a certain height is determined by taking 36.5 and subtracting 2.5 H. Okay, now what does H represent? Kilometers. All right, so you tell me the distance off of the surface and I'll tell you the temperature. Okay, you give me a distance in kilometers, 3 kilometers. I'll put 3 in place of the H. I'll do the calculations. I'll tell you what the temperature should be at 3 kilometers off this planet's surface. That's what this equation is doing. Okay, so our first question is, if I give you the height off the surface and you tell me the temperature, what does the inverse of the function do? Okay, well, the inverse of the function should be you tell me the temperature, right? And I'll tell you how high off the planet you are. So the inverse tells you the height of the surface you are when the temperature is a given amount. Okay, so it does the inverse of the given. Okay, next question. Let's go ahead and find the inverse of this temperature function here. So T of H, or I put T of N, it should be T of H equals 36.5 minus 2.5 H. So the first thing we do is replace T of H with Y, interchange the variables. Okay, now solve for Y. So I'm going to subtract 36.5, right? This is a positive 36.5 on the left side or on the right side of my equation. So to make that 36.50, I got to subtract 36.5 from both sides. Notice that leaves me with a negative 2.5 Y on the right and minus 36.5 on the left. Now I'm going to switch sides. Okay, I like to have what I'm solving for on the left. So now I got negative 2.5 Y equals N minus 36.5. And guys, these N's should have been H's. So I'm not trying to confuse you. There's nothing here besides I inadvertently put an N rather than an H. It's not going to make a difference in the outcome. Okay, we're still solving for Y here. So now my last step is I want to isolate the Y. I want to make this negative 2.5 become a 1. So I'm going to divide each side by negative 2.5. And that's my final result here. Y equals, again, that should be H minus 36.5 over negative 2.5. They actually asked me to do it in terms of X. So all that means is your variable over here needs to be whatever that variable is there. So X minus 36.5 over negative 2.5 is my inverse function. Okay, remember the inverse function is you tell me the temperature and I'll tell you the height. The original function is you tell me the height, I'll tell you the temperature. Okay. So now it's saying, let's go ahead and take our temperature function and find the inverse value of 27. So the inverse function, we just found it, is X minus 36.5 over negative 2.5. I want to find T inverse of 27. So I'm going to put 27 in place of my X, go through my calculations, and T inverse of 27 is 3.8. Now, what does that mean? Well, again, remember what it means is if you tell me the temperature, I'll tell you how high above the planet you should be. So at a temperature of 27 degrees Celsius, you are 3.8 kilometers above the surface of this planet. Okay. Inverse switches the meanings of the variables, switches the input-output concept. All right. So you're going to work on those tonight. You got a handful of questions that look just like that tonight. Being able to work with a function and its inverse and know the meanings of them. What do they represent? What do they find for us? Okay. So, look back on that if you need to. I know on the, Alex questions themselves, you can get help on those too. They help explain some things. Remember, guys, you're getting 100% on these assignments. It's very important. You go back and rework them until you get 100%. There's no reason not to. Okay. All right. I'll let you have at it.